G'day, it's your old mate Matthew here. Welcome to the Yarnsman podcast. In this episode, we have a good yarn with Grant Walker. He shares his yarn from couch potato to ultra marathon runner and completing the Moab 240. I found this episode really interesting for a whole range of reasons, but he poses the question of what would you do if you were guaranteed success? The whole thing around being curious, reiterating our point of, talking best while side by side. So doing that while you're out running or walking, bring people on the journey with you, and it's okay to ask for help or accept help when it's offered. And a classic thing I quite enjoyed was the hardest thing about running is putting your kit on. Hope you enjoy the yarn as much as I did. Hello and welcome to the Yarnsman podcast. Today we have Grant Walker with us. Well, I'm actually with him in a meeting room. How are you, Grant?
Yeah, I'm great. Glad to be finally doing this. It's been in the calendar for a while. So.
Yeah. And a warm-up for Thursday.
Yeah.
Grant is a father, a husband, business owner, and ultra-marathon runner. So I'm really interested in getting to this yarn. We'll start with the questions. What have you struggled with in the last week?
There's lots I've struggled with in the last week, but the thing that I've really struggled with is actually people and not thinking through their actions. And what I mean by that is people saying, on one hand, I struggle with my mental health. So, if this is from an employment perspective, struggle with my mental health, you're not supporting me. And then on the other hand, getting stuck into staff members on social media and things. So I found that to be a really ironic and sort of opposing kind of challenge to come up against, because it's like, I think sometimes people forget that bosses and employees and managers and business owners and that, like, they're people as well. So I think I've really struggled with that, and it probably wasn't personally directed at me, but I've seen it directed at a manager, and it's like, that person has feelings too. Like, what about their mental health? What about what they're going through? And yet you're saying, on the other hand, that that person's not giving you the support you need, which I disagree with. But it's this real struggle, and it kind of, for me, I think it's broader than just employment. I think we don't know what people's stories are and what's going on behind the scenes. And like we're talking before about businesses, and you never kind of know what's going on behind the scenes. Like, it's so true with people as well. And so I struggle to get my head around that of why people have become, or it seems like they've become more and more selfish with their kind of thinking and feelings. And I know it's probably gone down the rabbit hole really quickly.
No. Let's go into this, because this is a really interesting one, and there's a couple of different angles I want to come at it here. It's like, as an employer, what's good duty of care?
Yeah.
Equally, and we get this too, right, is we try with best intentions to support or connect, create those opportunities, and we'll get slagged on social media because it didn't work for that person at that time. And so where I've come back to, and I guess I'm saying this is a bit of a rant because I feel it personally, and you see this happening so often. It's like, well, as long as you can look at yourself in the mirror in the morning, or at 2 a.m. when you get up, when you're thinking about these things, is was I attacking it or approaching it with the best intentions? And if the answer is yes, this is a dynamic process. We're dealing with people. You're done with the best intentions, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I'm saying this out loud to try and tell myself the same thing.
But it's this whole thing, like, and what works for one person won't work for others, and that's universal. It doesn't just apply to this particular issue. And I'm well aware of that, and we're always trying to, and I always feel like we're trying to do the best thing and find different ways and different solutions for different people. But I think also, a lot of the time we need to ask, and I'm always asking myself, what's my part in this? And telling the team as well, like, what's your part in this? As a kind of, not as a blame game, but as just a self-reflection of like, hey, what have we learned? What can we do better next time?
The accountability piece, which is, I think that's a thing we see, is why won't you solve my problem?
Yeah.
But no, I'm happy to help and connect you, but you can lead a horse to water, but sometimes you have to salt the oats.
That's right.
And I think there's a thing too there of slagging people off on social media or whatever that in a internet world, come and talk to the person about it. Have the conversation.
Yeah. And I think we see countless examples of that all over the media, all the time, like, this person and ripping into them on social media, and you've only got to scroll through Facebook or LinkedIn for a couple of minutes and you usually find somebody attacking somebody for their point of view or their beliefs, and it's like, what about putting yourself in their shoes and just thinking about what they might be going through or why they might have that opinion? And you don't have to agree with everybody, but just consider what other people might be thinking, feeling, and why they might have a difference. I think differences are what makes culture and kind of creates really good points of friction and tension, which creates great cultures and it makes life interesting. But it doesn't mean we should personally attack people just because, it probably goes back, it's not just modern society, I think we see it more quickly through social media, but, I guess historic examples have been religions, killing each other over what's probably, we look back as trivial things, but also some major things. So I just think that, that's been really on my mind the last week, and then trying to educate my kids about that as well. And it's like, well, they might be saying something different, or they may have a different point of view to you. Doesn't mean they're wrong, doesn't mean you're wrong. You can both be right and have a difference of opinion. But being curious, being curious about why that person thinks that in a non-aggressive way, right? Yeah, and it's I'm a very curious person by nature, and I ask a lot of questions, and I love getting to know people and asking and listening a lot, because I love learning about people and their story and what makes them tick and why they do what they do and why they think what they do, and then putting that in the context of like why they might have formed those opinions or why their background might have led them to that. But how do you teach the next generation to be more curious? Well, there's part of the challenge. God, we jumped right into the rabbit hole right then, didn't we? We really went there straight away. I feel like I needed to get something off my chest then. But I mean, that highlights the whole point of like talking and connecting with people, right? And how important it is, right? And you can start with a really innocuous question, and very quickly you end up in a pretty cool conversation. Yeah, right? Yeah. Well, looking ahead to next week, what's something you want to work on? The thing I'm trying to work on at the moment, and I'm working on it, and it's a work in progress, but I've been really trying to be deliberate about my time, because there are so many demands on time, and it's this tension between work, family, exercise for me, so running and doing other things, and then time with the kids and all the other demands, and then trying to find time for friends and even just some downtime. It feels like I've almost got a schedule on like an hour of Netflix kind of thing. Like, that's how busy it seems to have become. So I think that's probably the big thing I'm really working on at the moment, and it's a constant struggle because it can feel quite overwhelming at times. Like, with your exercise, do you put that in your diary and block it out? No meetings? Sometimes I do. So if I'm going to do it during the day, and I mean, I'm lucky I own the business, I can have a little bit of flexibility. You never really stop working when you own the business. It's a 24/7 gig. So if it's during the day, I will block out like a couple of hour block to get that in if I know it's going to be a struggle. But sometimes it's just, it gets fitted in around everything else. So it's like, often it's after the kids have gone to bed and everything else is done, and then it's like, okay, great, I'm going to go for a run. And it's like, it's 9 o'clock at night, so it's a real struggle. But I feel like it makes me question a little bit about prioritisation and working out what is really important. And it's like this thing that somebody said to me many years ago, and it's probably somebody's, will know where the quotes come from. I presume it's so no credit from me, but it's this point about when you're on your deathbed, will you be sitting there saying, I wish I'd stayed at work and sent another email, or I wish I'd really spent another hour at work? No, probably not. You'll be saying, I wish I'd spent another hour with the kids, or I wish I'd gone on that holiday, or so it's kind of like, I'm trying to look at it through that lens and going, actually, some of those things that seem really important at the time, in the grand scheme of things, probably not, and prioritising those moments where you will get joy and you will look back in the long term and go, I really, really enjoy that. You've got to balance that, of course, against the fact that you've still got to put food on the table and bring an income in, you've got a job to do and expectations and all of that, but I think that kind of helps me balance those things a little bit.
I think what you're talking about is the regrets of the dying. It's either a book by a nurse or whatever. The top one is I wish I'd spend more time with family and friends.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to have in the back of your mind. I mean, my one is, is anyone going to die? Well, no, so then it's not a priority. But if someone is, then it kind of, in this line of work, that kind of is a higher priority thing that you need to move towards.
Yeah.
What are you proud of?
So many things, and I think it's, if I think about things that I'm proud of at the moment, it's probably my kids, actually, and just that they've come along for this wild ride. And like anybody who's grown up in a family where there's a business involved, it is a wild ride. Like I grew up, mum and dad had motels, it was and had a bakery and fruit shop and all sorts of businesses along the years, and that was a really cool educational journey. But it's one hell of a wild ride, and often you're like dragged along to meetings or like come and serve in the shop.
Yeah,
or,
put on the tool. Yeah.
As Mum said, I had a rag in my hand at 5, and it should be going around cleaning the motel units, and I'd be going around behind her making a mess, trying to help. So I think I'm really proud of my kids for being able to kind of hold themselves together through that and actually thrive and be okay with so many different things going on, because my wife and I both work in the business together, so it's not like one of us can kind of be, oh well, I'm on annual leave or I'm taking some time off. It's kind of it's full on, but it's been really cool to see them like excel in swimming, and my daughter did triathlon last week, and I really put some great effort into it, and it's that I guess I was never a sporty kid, so seeing them kind of embrace that and really want to do it and almost crave it, I'm just really proud that we've kind of created that environment where that's the normal, and it's not, the normal is not just sitting in front of TV and being a vegetable for 4 hours a day. Although we do that as well, because like
it's important.
Any parent who gets a kid through a week of school and gets to Friday afternoon, it's like it's okay to veg out now. Like, you got to have some downtime. So I'm really just proud of their resilience, I guess, which is, I think, something we probably underrate in our kids, is just building their resilience. It's probably an important life skill that I think is missing.
Very much so.
Big time, right across society.
Yeah, very much so. What gives you hope?
I mean, there are some people in the next generation who, will be able to provide us leadership. And I think and we go down the big rabbit hole here, but I think there's a lack of leadership in a lot of areas across the world. It's a universal problem. We don't have as many really, really strong leaders. And I'm not just talking about like prime ministers and presidents and politicians, and it's sporting teams, it's organisations, it's businesses, it's even friendship groups. I think we don't have enough strong leaders coming through, and it certainly feels like, we've probably employed a few hundred people over the years, so we've seen a good cross-section of people, and there are a lot of good leaders out there, but I feel like it's one skill that is kind of lacking, and people that are actually able to stand up and go, yep, this is what we're doing, this is what I believe in, and this is the direction we're going in. And I think that's strong leadership. And so I've seen elements, not just in my kids, but in other kids as well, kind of coming through where they're quite, even into their teenage years, quite, this is what we're doing, and a bit of conviction behind them. So I think that kind of gives me hope that, they'll be able to solve some of the problems that we've created for them. And the generations before us have created for them, global warming, trashing the environment, plastic in the waterways, all these things which I never really cared about. But as you start to think about, like, well, what's the future going to look like for the kids, you start to go, oh, actually, maybe we should pay more attention to that. But who's going to stand up and actually solve it?
Why do you think there is a lack of potential leaders?
I think, we've always, in the New Zealand context, I think we always talk about this tall poppy syndrome, and I think it's a little bit of that, certainly in New Zealand, where the minute you kind of pop your head up and be outspoken on something, you do get cut down a little bit. I think it's also what we were talking about before, about the whole social media aspect, where you do get cut down really, really quickly, and so people probably, that beats them down a little bit probably, so people try and, take a view and show some leadership on something, and they just get relentlessly cut down and have swipes taken at them, and then they probably just go, well, why bother? And then it comes down to that resilience piece, right? Like, of how do you continue through all that noise, and know that you're on the right path when there's people around you, and it's usually a small few saying, we disagree, in strongest, in pretty strong language. So, yeah,
I hear you on that one. Let's dive into your story, mate.
Yeah.
So from I've said before, from couch potato to ultra marathon runner. I mean, that's quite a journey. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So it's like, as I said before, I never grew up an athlete. I played hockey at high school. The reason I played hockey was they needed a goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper kind of just stands there and doesn't really do a huge amount. Every now and again they'll kind of run, or they'll stop the ball, so I didn't have to run up and down the field or anything like that. So,
but you've got quite a big wingspan as well, which would be perfect for a goalie.
Kind of worked for me. So, yeah, running was never kind of in my wheelhouse, and I'd be. I was probably a classic kid of, like, if it was cross country day, I'd do everything I could not to go to school. Probably similar for athletics day, or I'd just be the last kid, running out. I didn't care, it didn't really bother me, that was not my strength. But I think as I kind of, you reach a point in your life where it's like, and I was a reasonably big guy, and probably at risk of, or definitely at risk of, health issues, and then when you have kids, you're always thinking about, how long I'm going to be around for them, and all of that, and really struggled to kind of, like, even just play with them at the playground or things like that. So that kind of, I'd always said I didn't want to be that dad who, would be sort of sitting at the picnic table watching the kids play and could never participate. And so that was kind of the driving force for me, just essentially to get off my backside and make some, reasonable changes to my life. But when I started running, I couldn't run to the end of our driveway, and it was like, 15, 20 metres, like 5 or 6 steps, I'd be out of breath, and, probably would have given up. So I just kind of started doing little bits and just being more active, walking, doing what I could do, not what felt comfortable, because you're never going to make progress if you just sit there feeling comfortable. You just sit on the couch all the time, right? Like, and then running a lamppost, walking a lamppost, the classic thing. And then kind of started to build some fitness reasonably. It kind of comes together quickly. Like, when you're coming from zero, it's quite easy to get a little bit of fitness. And then it just felt good. Like, it felt really good. But I think for me, the big thing was, it wasn't so much the physical element, it was the mental aspect around actually, like, you start to get some blood pumping, oxygen, all those kind of things, and endorphins or whatever the chemicals are floating around there.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of a great way to decompress. And so I kind of found it was almost like a stress relief from life and work, and just, being able to decompress. And then I'd always had in the back of my head, and I've got this vivid memory of watching Iron Man seeing it on the news article or something like that, and thinking, oh, that'd be really cool. Like, imagine being able to do that. And so, an Ironman is 3.8k swim, 180k bike ride, and then run a marathon at the end of it. And so I'd never ever considered that I'd be physically able to do that. So as I was sort of starting to get a little bit fitter, I said to Jim, I think I'd really like to do an Ironman one day. Maybe that's a classic midlife crisis, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty crazy thing from nothing to
that.
You're right.
But it's like, and so then she was like, well, we'll do it. And I was like, oh, well, it was like eight months away.
Yeah.
And she's like, but her but was, but maybe instead of trying to do it then, focus on the next year, because there's going to be a huge amount of training involved, and you're probably underestimating the amount of training. And she was right. Like, there's a huge amount of training, to be able to complete that is probably 15-20 hours a week. You kind of got to dedicate to, you're doing 3 sports: swimming, biking, running, plus all the, stretching. And I was at the chiropractor,
yes.
the osteo once every fortnight, and
your own physio,
and
stretching you out on the floor over there. Yeah.
So it's all of those things that kind of come into it. And so I just started doing that, and I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to tackle that big goal, I probably need to do something. I probably need to learn how to swim. That's probably a good place to start, because I could swim and I wouldn't drown, but I certainly was not a long distance swimmer. I'd never really done swimming at school, so got some lessons in that. Got the road bike out of the garage and put some air back in the tyres, and actually made sure it ran, and started to get on that, and then just kept going with the running. And so I did an event called Mission Mount Summers, and I did the half marathon. And basically you run from Woolshed Creek car park all the way through the Mount Summers track, and you end up down at Staveley. And it was 21 k's, and it was probably it was hard. Like, took me nearly 4 hours.
You were about to say it's probably one of the hardest things you've ever done.
At the time,
yeah, relative.
And I look back now, and I'm like, I could probably go and do that, no problem at all. I could go and do that, no problem at all. I know I could, because I've got the confidence to do it, because I've done it, and I've run a half marathon in training many, many times, and I've done half marathon. But at the time, that was like there was hills involved, and it was off, trail and all sorts of things, and you're carrying a backpack with hydration and all sorts of stuff, and it's this whole new world. But I did it, and I finished it, and I was like, that was amazing. I have to do that again. That was just so much fun. And I've always been that kind of big, like going on an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
I used to love going doing tramping or overnight stuff with scouts at school, or all those kind of things. I've always been reasonably adventurous. So I did that, and then I was like, well, if I can do that, then imagine what else I can do. So then I signed up I saw this 100k ultra on the west coast called the South Island Ultra advertised, and I was like, well, I mean, I've done 20, so 100 can't be that much of a stretch, surely. And so I was like, I'm just going to give that a crack. Like, why not? See how we go. Be good training for Ironman. And so I did that, and then I was like, this is the hardest thing we've ever done. And it absolutely was. I couldn't walk for 3 days afterwards. I finished within 20 minutes of the cut-off, just made it, hobbling across the line. Looking back, made about every possible mistake you could make, not enough fluid, probably went too hard out in the start and didn't save enough for the second half, didn't eat enough, hadn't trained enough, just everything mistake you could make, I probably did. But I learned so much. But I think the thing was that I kind of figured out I could push myself beyond what I thought was possible. And I think that's been the big learning for me out of all of this stuff, is when you think it's hard and when you think it's time to give up, you can push on, and especially with physical stuff, it's usually the mind giving up long before the body will. Your body will actually keep going for quite a considerable amount of time, as I've learned.
Yeah, it's the. You sure you don't want to just take this short track? I mean, I think for me, I've been training for a half marathon, and some days you're out running, and it's just that voice. Why don't you just take this? You only need to run a K today. Away you go. No, leave me alone. I'm going running.
Yeah, that's right.
Fighting that voice.
It is, and your body all the time is telling you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like it'll create. Your knee will start hurting, or your ankle will hurt, or your back will hurt, or you'll feel out of breath. Like your body is telling you this is not a normal state that you're supposed to be in. Like, how do we get you to stop?
Yeah.
But when you push through that, and I'm not talking about pushing past being injured, because that's a different kind of pain. You actually find that you can achieve a lot more than what you thought. And so I've started applying that through kind of over the last few years to other areas of life as well, and just thinking about like what is possible if we push the boundaries and keep going and try different things. And there's lots of lessons to come out of that. So then I ended up doing Ironman. So while I was doing Ironman, I was in the bike trainer all the time, probably like 8 or 10 hours a week, and used to watch just YouTube videos of other people and their, Ironman stories, and then I started watching, when I kind of watched all of those ones that are on YouTube that I could find, and all the training tips and techniques, and there's tens of thousands of experts out there. Most of them don't really know what they're talking about, but you always get interesting tidbits to take away. Everybody's an expert.
Right, yeah.
And then I started watching stuff about ultra marathons, because I had this sort of itch in the back of my head, like, I want to do some more of those. And I saw this video of someone doing the Moab 240. So the Moab 240 is a 240-mile race in Moab in Utah. So you go through the desert, baking hot in the day, mid-30s, just dry desert heat, and then over 2 mountain ranges. So you get up to, I think it's about 4,500 meters of elevation.
Wow.
So like your base level elevation is about 1,200 meters, and so there's a couple of big climbs. But to put that in context, I think Mount Cook's only about 2. So like, and you're starting at a base level of 1,200. So already it's hard to. The body's not used to operating at that. I mean, we live in Christchurch, like it's like 3 meters above sea level.
Yeah.
It's easy. So yeah, this 240-mile race, and so there's the equivalent of climbing. It's more than Mount Everest, so 8,900 meters or something. It's insane. It's run over 5 days. There's just so many things that can go wrong. Only about half the people finish it, and there's a lottery to get in. So I put my name in the lottery, and I just said to Jim, my wife, there's this bucket list in the States. I'd really love to do it one day. So I put my name in the lottery, because sometimes I know with these lotteries they change them over the years, and the more time you've entered, the more chances you get. So I was like, well, I'll put my name in. Probably won't come out, but maybe that'll give me a better chance in one of the future years. And then my name got drawn out of the lottery, and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So and I hadn't told Gemma anything about the distance or anything that was kind of involved, because she probably would have tried to talk me out of it, and rightly so. Like I think that would be a perfectly sensible thing to do. And so I went home with all of these. I had the sales pitch in my head of how I was going to be like, well, this and this, and these are the reasons, and all of that. And I had the video. There's a short, like 3-minute promotional video, and so I said, "Oh, remember that race I was talking about? Well, this is it." And showed her the video, and I was like, "And my name got drawn out of the lottery, so I've got a spot." And her reaction was, "You have to do it." So I did. So that was in the January, I think the lottery was, and then did the Ironman like 6 weeks later. So that I was just kind of focused on that, and then all of a sudden that finished, and then I was like, crap, I've got 6 months to train for a 240-mile race in the Utah desert, and like the furthest I've ever run's 100 k's, and this is like 4 times that. Plus, you're talking about what ended up being 4 nights out, in the wilderness. There's all sorts of things to train for. There's logistics. There's you're traveling half around the world to do the event. So just kind of got started and then broke it down into like, okay, well the running bit actually ended up being the easy bit, because it's like, well, how do you train for that? And consensus seemed to be, well, it's not that different to training from a marathon or an ultra marathon, like just lots of running, vary the running, and just time on your feet. Even just slogging and walking up hills and things, like it all benefits. So that part was kind of easy. I just had to carve out the time. But then it was like just little things like working out, well, what's the best shoe sock combo, and then how's that going to play out in the desert with the sand, and then your feet they swell over 4 days. So then it becomes like, okay, well, what works in Christchurch weather may not work over there. So trying to figure out those variables, and then have different options.
And be prepared to like do a quick pit stop, right?
Yeah, and so there's
change the tyres.
I think there was 15 aid stations around the course, and so you could have like 7 or 8 drop bags. So my drop bags were like decent backpack size kind of drop bags. Some of them had full changes of clothes, and there was bags of all sorts of nutrition and spare shoes and all these different types of socks and things, and so just the logistics. And then you start to think about things like, what if something goes wrong? So like, what if I've got to roll an ankle, or even like get a headache? You've got to make sure, okay, well, I'm going to take some painkillers. Like, do I have those in my backpack? Because you've got a vest on, but there's only so much you can carry. And then, well, where do I put those in drop bags? And then thinking about clothing and like what's lightweight, multi-purpose, going to be good for the heat. Because in the middle of the day you're like baking. It's like walking through the desert, because it literally is the desert, funnily enough. And then at night it's like, there was one night I remember, it was about -3, and we're up on the top of this mountain, and I was at an aid station, and you kind of curled up around the fire, but still like shivering, and then you're just trying to like put layers on, and you're completely sleep deprived state. So just the biggest challenge was actually just the logistics, I think, and then mentally preparing myself for the fact that you're about to go and do, go off on this adventure where success is not guaranteed. In fact, it's probably more likely that you're not going to finish, and then you're going to put yourself into a position where you're going to go without sleep essentially for 5 days, and so just mentally preparing yourself for that, and then understanding that hallucinations will probably happen, and you might just fall asleep while you're running. It is possible. First-hand experience. You definitely fall asleep while you're running.
Crazy.
And then just the keeping yourself safe, and then there's snakes and mountain lions and all sorts of other things.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there some bitey monsters running around? Of course there is.
Yeah. So, spoiler alert, I did finish the Moab 240. I was the last official finisher. I came in with 16 minutes before the cutoff. And so out of 220 people that started, 111 finished, and I was the 111th finisher that year. So that was like, everybody goes, well, in my mind, I'm like, you came last. And it's like, that was my initial reaction. And it's like, actually, no, like, just put this in perspective, right? So most people wouldn't have ever even completed or contemplated doing something like that, or even have got off the couch and done it. Much less actually given it a go, and then actually completed it within the cutoff time. So I think it's, when you look back at the history of that race, it's less than 1,000 people that have actually ever finished that race. And so if you compare that to like how many people have successfully climbed Mount Everest, which is what someone told me a few weeks after, and I was like, actually, yeah, you're right. Maybe that was quite an achievement. But I think that's the thing. When you're doing these things, you don't necessarily think, oh, this is going to be my a big life achievement or anything like that. I was just like, this is a cool adventure. Like, we'll see what happens. There's so many stories that come out of that kind of that 240-mile journey, and I learned so much about myself. But I think that the big thing is it's that curiosity piece. Like, when I look back, I was just kind of curious to see, could I do it? How far could I go? What would happen? And then curious about all the preparation for that. And I think that's the thing that has been the cool thing out of it, has been seeing other people be inspired to tackle their own hard. And like, I know people that have said, oh look, saw what you're doing, and like, I've started running, or I'm tackling a 5k, or I'm doing park run, or some people have taken it to the extreme and done a 50k ultra, or all those sorts of things. And part of that is probably just seeing me doing it and going, well, if he can do it, I could probably do it. So that's been the really, really cool thing. But then also seeing the kids, and this is back to what we were talking about before, like, the normal for them is like, oh, dad's going for a run, or dad's tackling something really hard, and they're always at the finish line. So yeah, it's been really cool.
It's quite the journey, and well, congratulations, it's bloody fantastic. Many questions. Wanted to perhaps start with support crew and things, because obviously there's a bit involved there. How did that all work?
So I wouldn't recommend doing it on your own without crew.
yeah.
So at the time, we just couldn't logistically make it work to have the whole family come as well. So I went off on my own and did it. And I think it was harder for them, or for Gemma anyway, watching it here on the tracker, because you've got a satellite tracker on your shoulder.
You'd need to,
so they can find the body afterwards, I guess. Like,
yeah.
No, so everybody at home can kind of watch along, and I kind of underestimated that, and I didn't really share it. And in hindsight, I probably wish I had have, because I think I kind of went, well, who wants to watch me run? See where I am running in the desert for 5 days. But there was people telling me, like, oh no, we used to come into work in the morning, we'd log on and look at
have you up on the big screen
and see where he is, and oh shit, he's moved up overnight, or he's dropped back, or he's not moving, he's probably sleeping, or so I kind of underestimated that kind of impact. But yeah, so I did it on my own, and so I had my own drop bags, and the aid stations are really, really good. So they're not, anybody who's run a race in New Zealand, it's not your typical, there's a bit of tailwind, a few jet planes, and maybe some chips and a few other bits and pieces on the table. It's some of them have got like camp stretchers to sleep on, there's chairs, there's medics there. They'll cook you a full feed. So my go-to was hamburgers, so they cook up like a couple of decent sized hamburgers, and they do like quesadillas and pocket bacon, so crispy bacon you sort of shove in a pocket and chew on later, because you can only survive so long on sugary snacks, which is your typical kind of energy source. So I didn't have any crew, and then but it was so through Facebook, and Gemma just put out on there, if anybody sees Grant out on course, like we can't be there, so just give them an extra cheer from us and all that. And it was really interesting, because I was running the race, and then a couple of people actually said to me, oh, you're that guy that your wife posted that post about you. And so I was running along, and it was a really good way to kind of start a conversation with people, and you have some incredible conversations, because sometimes you're running side by side with people, and that's a really good way to have a conversation. Like, if you want to really get deep with someone, just go for a walk around the block. You will talk about things that you wouldn't talk about face to face. And so often, you're running for like 6, 8, 10 hours with first people you've never met before, and what else are you going to do? It passes the time. So you talk to people. So there was a runner from Kiwi guy living in Colorado. He busted his knee at about 70 miles in. His knee just kind of gave up, and so he had another Kiwi guy, Tony, who was supporting him, And so then he messaged Gemma on Facebook and was like, oh, do you think Grant would like a pacer for a section? Because you can have, in the sort of later stages of the race, you can have someone run with you, which is not just, it's just there to be kind of, well, keep you safe, but also to kind of help just motivate you to keep going.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can spend a lot of time zombie walking and not really consciously thinking about what you're doing. So anyhow, I ended up pacing the section with Tony, and then and that was really cool because I got to talk to someone and, you know, really interesting conversation, and so he paced me for this section through one of the nights, and which is wild. Like a stranger from the other side of the world is basically just staying up all night to help you run your race, and giving up all of their time and, you know, driving out to the middle of nowhere and getting someone to pick them up from the middle of nowhere. I was like, that's so cool. And so then he actually ended up coming back to help with the last couple of sections in the race, which was when I was really pushing the cut-off time, so probably wouldn't have completed it without the help of others, but set out thinking I knew better and could do it all myself, and like, I'll be fine and she'll be right and all those kind of things. But having people around you that support you is so important. And I think it's like that you know, I talk a lot about the lessons I learned from it, but one of them is you can't actually do everything on your own, and it's okay to have people help you. And it's okay to ask for help, and there was many times where I had to ask complete strangers, and, you know, the grossest example was people helping drain blisters on your feet. And complete random medics or people that are just volunteers that have given up like 3 or 4 days of their life to go out in the middle of nowhere and just help people run this race. And they're like, can you help me drain a blister and take my feet back up, or, you know, or they get the wipes out and they're wiping the sand and stuff off your feet. And
Lovely.
And like, you know, that's just that is just so cool. That was so cool to have all those people out there. So I always say to people, even if you don't think you can do one of these things, you should just go and volunteer at a race to support and be at an aid station and just watch what happens and see the people coming through. And I guarantee you'll be like, actually, those people all look like me. Like, there are people of all shapes and sizes and different athletic builds and everything doing all these things. And whether it's a running race or a bike race or whatever it is, you'll start to see what's possible and what other people are tackling. And just because what's hard for me might be completely outrageous for what you would like to do, doesn't mean that your hard is anything less or should be looked down upon. And the thing that pisses me off was when people go, I could never run as far as you. And it's like, well, you've already told yourself that story, right? Like, and I bet you could if you actually, focused and put time and energy into it. But also, who cares? If you're out there running a 5K or a half marathon or just walking around the block with your kids or whatever it is, like, that's awesome. Like, that should be celebrated. And I've never looked down on anybody who's run anything, because that was me.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, 5 years ago, you wouldn't have said, well, Grant will be running ultra marathons, much less tackling a 240 mile beast. And I think that's the thing we need to just keep in perspective, is like, you are actually capable of extraordinary things. And there's this one quote, and I don't know where it came from, but I read it recently, and it's this question of, if you were guaranteed success, what would you tackle? So if you're guaranteed to succeed at something, what would you do? Because that's probably the thing you should be doing.
I love that question.
Like, so, and it's a really, really interesting question when you start to think about it. Well, if I was guaranteed to succeed, what would I tackle? And that's not just running or sporting related. Like, that could be, relationship, it could be kid-based, it could be work-based, it could be, employment, looking for, like, there's so many different angles you could take to it. But what would you tackle? It's a really interesting question when you start to dive into it. And even if you don't end up taking on that thing, or you do and you don't succeed, imagine what you learn along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
So it was like, so I went into Moab knowing that there was every chance that I would not complete it, and it would, it would be not a failure because I don't like looking at it as a failure, but it'd be one hell of a learning experience. Um, and if you go into anything in life with that mindset, I think, I don't know, you'll unlock this element of potential and ambition that maybe you didn't even realise was there. But I think we just need to celebrate small wins sometimes and take the successes and just build on those blocks. So.
Yeah, I love it, mate. What a story! What a story! There's so many special bits in there, and that community and connection and curiosity through there. I'll finish with two questions. The first one, I was wondering about, you run a business, right?
Yeah.
What was the impact on your team of, you're out, I'm assuming you're out training quite a bit and you're away there. How did that all work out?
Yeah, I think well, I'm probably in a bit of a privileged position where, because I own the business, I probably can be a little bit more flexible with my time. But yeah, there was definitely days where I'm sure the team were probably thinking like, where the hell is he? He's out, running around, running for hours. I think it was overall a positive impact. And again, I think it's that kind of little bit inspiring story to come out of it. People looking and going, shit, that's really cool. We probably got a team who would just like get stuck in and get on with it, so probably didn't really think too much of it. I probably didn't even really share that I was tackling this to a lot of the team. We've got, at the time, I don't know how many staff we had, 50 or 60 staff at the time. Most of them probably weren't even aware that's what I was doing. Probably just like, oh, Grant's off for a run at lunchtime again, or he's leaving early to go for a run. And so it was only afterwards, I think, that kind of people were like, shit, he tackled that. But they had the tracker up on the screen at work and everybody was following along. And so it was, yeah, I think overall pretty supportive. But again, it comes back to like, bring people in.
But yeah, do you think, I'm going to ask a different question, but do you think that was part of protecting yourself of whatever might happen, or were you just not aware of the need?
100%, I think so. Protecting myself from that fear of failure. Because, what happens if I don't fail? Like, everybody's going to be like, looking at me going, feeling sorry for me, or, oh, look, he's just mad, he was never going to achieve that. So I think actually, yeah, there's probably an element for me of protecting myself from that. But in hindsight, that's stupid, because even if I had failed, it wasn't a failure. It was just I didn't get it on the first attempt. So, and I would have learned a huge amount about myself, about how to, not just how to do these races, but people said it will, like, some people had done it, talking about how it would kind of break you down to, not break you, but it will really just strip away everything, and you'll start to learn some things about yourself that you never knew, or never thought you'd uncover. And so to me, that's definitely true. And I think just the raw emotion of it as you're going through that, and what you're experiencing and learning, and like, you can't replicate that.
Yeah.
So it's I can't remember what the original question was, but it's a really, really interesting.
Well, it's about sharing
stuff
it.
To come out of it.
Yeah, but sharing it with people and bringing it on the journey.
Yeah.
I think this is a hugely inspiring story. The first day I'd met you was, I think it was about a year ago, and I'd just got to 5Ks in my run, training for a half marathon, and I was so excited and inspired and things. I think it's a fantastic story. To finish with, last question: what's the hardest thing about getting into running, or going running for that matter?
The hardest thing is just starting. That's absolutely 100% the hardest thing I've found. And so there was two things that I figured out that helped me. and anybody can apply this, and it doesn't matter whether you're running a 5K, whether you just want to go for a walk every day, or whether you want to tackle a ridiculous adventure. One is, I would set up the conditions so that I was more likely to do the things that I need to do. So if I get home from work, getting changed, instead of chucking on a hoodie and jeans and getting ready for a night of TV watching, I put on exercise gear. So I put my running shorts and t-shirt on and at least be half ready to go, because you increase the chances that you're actually going to go. And it's that really helped, because then you're like, oh well, I'm changed already, I might as well go for a run.
Yeah, you told me the hardest thing about going for running is putting your kit on. So there we go.
And it really is. And so if you want to become a runner or achieve anything, just break it down to what's the first step in that process, and just do that step.
Put your kit on. Yeah.
Put your kit on. So in running, it's just put your kit on. And so look, there's still times where I wouldn't go because I was just so tired, or the kids took forever to get to bed, or whatever happened. But those were pretty few and far between. And so that, I think, was probably one of the big things that I tell a lot of people about, is just get changed when you get home. Or if it's in the morning and you're going to go for a run once you've dropped the kids off at school, just get changed into your running gear first before the day gets away with you. Or however you structure that in, or whatever that looks like for you, whether that's putting your gear out the night before, or everybody's got a slightly different variation on it. And then the other thing that I found helped, and it still helps me push through some days when things are really hard, or when you're like, I just don't feel like running today, is okay, I'm just going to do a K. And like a K for me now is not a big thing, like that 5 or 6 minutes of running. And for most people that's achievable, but I just go, oh, I'm just going to run a K. If I'm not feeling after a K, I'll come home. I'll run around the block or whatever so that I'm close to home, and that'll be it. Once you start running, a K turns into 2, and then you're like, oh, I'm out now, I might as well keep going. And so again, it probably comes back to that, just setting up the conditions for success. And so I think whatever you're planning to tackle, whether it's running or something else, just break it down to the simplest couple of things that you can do that'll increase your chances of doing it, and then just do those things regularly. So every time I go out for a run, even now, it's like, I'm just going to run a K and see how I feel. Or the other thing I do sometimes is I'll run, if I'm like, oh, I really want to get 10 Ks in, but I know it's going to be a struggle, is I'll run 5 Ks away from home, and I've got no choice.
Yeah. Same. I don't like doing laps. It's got to be away and back. I love it.
But of course I know in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, well, I could always get an Uber or jump on a Lime scooter or whatever if I really wasn't feeling it. But you get there and you're like, oh, well, I've done that. I might as well run home now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, whatever you're tackling, just break it down to the smallest little habit you can change that's going to set it up to succeed. And like I said before, just because my hard is different to your hard doesn't make your hard any less hard. And so if 5K is a big achievement, and that's something you really want to tackle, then go for it. But surround yourself with people that will also encourage you. And I think that's one of the things that I take away from all of this, is that having kids and a wife is very encouraging and supportive, and just want you to succeed. And even knowing that you may not succeed at everything, but they still encourage you and push you in the right direction, is key to success. And just to surround yourself with other people in a similar situation. So if there's ask a couple of friends, hey, do you want to tackle a half marathon together, or a 5K, or it doesn't even need to cost anything. You can go to parkrun on a Saturday and do the 5K, and you can walk with them. But there's 1,000 other people doing it at the same time. So doesn't matter what your fitness is, doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter what your gear looks like, or if you've only got a pair of running shoes that haven't seen the light of day in 10 years, you can still tackle it. Yeah. Just give it a go.
Mate, absolutely fantastic story. Some really special moments and learnings there. Thank you so much, and we're looking forward to getting into it again. Not tomorrow night, Thursday night.
Thursday night.
Yeah, cool.
Hopefully, I'll share some funny stories.
Yeah.
which we probably haven't touched on today, but I could probably talk for like 3 or 4 days on all these things.
And not on a recorded line.
Yeah.
So there we go.
That's
Okay,
right.
mate. Thanks for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers.